Okay, it's recording now. So we decided to do, we're group number 2, right?
Yeah.
And we decided to do The Five Bloods, which is directed by Spike Lee. Somebody else can go over the rest of the overview because I don't.
Well, we're introduced to 4 Vietnam War vets, and they are on a trip back to Vietnam to uncover some gold that they had buried while they were serving in Vietnam.
So our first category is the editing and the camera work.
Yeah, so I think throughout the whole movie, we can all agree that the cutscenes themselves throughout the movie was very hard and sometimes shifted the movie's current topics. Sometimes, left me as a viewer disoriented, if y'all can agree with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I personally like it. I didn't like it.
Yeah, and I know Spike Lee is known for his cutscenes. Like, he's known for just having different angles of things happening as well. So I understood that. I took that into consideration. But also I agree, it did make it very confusing. Like, I was very confused as to what was going on. It was very chaotic.
I mean, you could tell though the difference between like the past and the present at certain points because like the way that the colors looked, but it was also kind of like confusing because of I remember we talked about like the guy with the camera and how that kind of confused us in a sense as to like what was going on. Cause I thought like the way that they had edited, like the gritty looking, like the yellowish color meant that they were in the past. But at certain points he was taking like a picture and I was like, are they in the past or are they in the present? So it was just confusing for me.
Right. And the editing, although it did add a lot to the plot, and like you said, we did understand like when flashbacks were happening. In some instances, the editing took away from the plot and kind of made it messy in a sense. Like it was hard for you to bounce back after a certain point, like a certain flashback or try to get back into what was currently going on because the editing did shift point of view so often.
Yeah, I definitely second that. It's like a lot of these scenes in the movie, we just have to let it breathe because it's something so heavy. So when he cuts really hard, it definitely throws things off. And it's like I was still, thinking about what just happened. Things that are really detrimental to the plot as well. But another thing I want to highlight is the camera work. I feel like the camera work did do its job throughout the movie. At times, were kind of excessive because, I feel like sometimes the camera would pan to dead bodies on the ground that we weren't even aware how they died or how they were actually murdered. It would just be like a dead body, especially in flashbacks. We'd see a lot of dead bodies, which it still adds to the purpose of the plot and the message.
I think that kind of goes what we were saying earlier. It I don't know, it was just kind of confusing in a sense. It felt like a lot of the stuff that was the speeches and the overall flashbacks were kind of tossed in, and it just made the movie feel like it was just it was kind of unfinished, and then they had decided to throw in other little speeches and everything sort of tied together.
Right.
I do feel like there's a few times where the editing kind of enhances the story. Like when they switched to the woman on the radio, I just feel like that was a really nice touch and it really does deepen the plot. Going back to some of the scenes where they mention what's going on in the US, I feel like it does kind of contextualize the story and build on the plot, but also with the length of the movie and then just the random cuts in between, it did get really confusing at times.
I agree. Our next section, we said the script, right?
Mhm.
So we had said earlier, like the script sort of felt like there were about like I had wrote there were a bunch of plot holes in my opinion. Like for some of the characters, we couldn't really tell who they really were till towards the end. And then you had like plot holes in the sense like Otis and his daughter that he just met, but in the end they're talking about, oh, like how I missed you and how I loved you, but it's like you essentially are strangers. So then it also felt like the movie was kind of lazy, or like the writing was lazy, but it was like intentionally lazy so it would leave people like questioning. And I know we said before like that's sort of Spike Lee's intention, but it was still like just it made the movie seem like it was kind of unfinished, like the story in general. And then it was like he didn't fully dip into like the plots for certain characters. Like we didn't know much about certain people until they died. Like he didn't go fully into their story or like their friendship. It seemed like they just were all like co-workers in a sense, but they had like a overall mission.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I feel like they didn't, like you said, they didn't spend enough time like going back into the characters' lives. Like they never said like what like for example, what was his name? The guy that jumped on the grenade.
Oh,
Was that Melvin?
No, Melvin was the one that got blown up.
was it Eddie?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it was Eddie. Like we didn't really know a lot about him. Like
Right.
all we saw was that they gave the money to his family, but we didn't even know about his family. Like we didn't know anything about him. And so I feel like when he died, I didn't really feel anything.
Melvin was the one that threw himself on the grenade. Eddie was the
Oh,
one
okay.
Oh, Eddie's the one that got blown up. Okay. Okay.
Right, yeah. I feel like I didn't feel anything when he died. I was just like,
It
okay,
was gruesome,
yeah,
but because like we didn't really have a backstory of a lot of the characters, it wasn't sad.
right, exactly.
I
Right.
feel like that
Yeah.
was like a big miss with this movie was like the lack of being able to, connect to the audience because we were watching, but I never felt emotionally attached or really had feelings for any of the characters.
Right. And I feel like the characters weren't memorable also because I just forgot his name. Like
Right.
that's how you know, like they didn't spend a lot of time building on these characters. And so I feel like that's a big problem like with this movie. Like they should have really spent more time doing that.
I agree. I
Yeah.
feel like it kind of like the movie seemed like it was like left unended. Like there was more like I feel like I started the movie with less questions than how I ended it.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was very chaotic. Even though that's kind of, again, like that's kind of Spike Lee's style, but I think this time it just wasn't executed very well.
Yeah, it was just all over the place. And we had looked up like how long it had took them to film, and it kind of made sense because it just seemed like it was kind of rushed work. And then our next topic is the music.
Yeah, the music, I think we're all a little conflicted about how we feel about the music throughout the whole movie. A lot of it, a lot of it was a lot of Marvin Gaye, or at least a lot of the songs that all of us could pick out were a lot of Marvin Gaye, or just a lot of music that I think all of us probably could recognize. Just all it was good. They placed it in good spots. Um, they it again like we got the context with the music. So like when they're heading down the river, there's the song "The Ride of the Valkyries" that's playing. Like that's really a well-known song. And then there's a lot of Marvin Gaye again. There's Marvin Gaye at the very beginning, and there's Marvin Gaye at the very end. They're singing Marvin Gaye in there. So I think overall, the music does contextualize the characters in the time that they're from. But I think that they could have added in a little bit more music that showed where they are now, because they're in present time, as present as it could be, but a lot of the music that is playing is a lot of music from when they were in the war. So I think the fact that we only heard music from that time didn't really put us in the present anymore.
I agree. I enjoyed the music for the most part. I feel like they probably could have had like a little bit more. And I liked how they had like the woman was talking and then it introduced the song and then it played over the scene. I personally enjoyed that out of the whole movie, but I don't know. I feel like they could have did a little bit more.
Right.
Right. And also I feel like what you were saying about the how they should have played music from present times, I agree with that because I think that there's a lot of music out that kind of like pays homage to music from that time. So if they added like music from this time that paid homage to that time, it would have made it a lot better because
Right.
it would have made us like properly like capture the fact that it's in present times, like they're going back in present times and they're not going back in the past.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I was thinking like maybe they're playing so much music from like the 60s and stuff just to like reminisce because you know how they never aged the actors or
Right.
de-aged them. Maybe that was like one of the reasons why they chose such old music because it would just kind of emphasize the point that like they're kind of stuck reliving like this old
Right.
life.
No, I agree with that. I can see that point, especially, seeing that a lot of them suffer from some sort of PTSD. So them keeping the music as the same time as when they were in the war does emphasize like they are stuck in that time frame.
I do have to echo what you're saying about how you like exactly where the music was placed as well. Like I remember, especially during Norman's scenes, sometimes when the music would pick up during certain not climax changes, like plot changes, or like certain
Right.
discoveries in the plot. It was those times where they used the music or like those scores were very good uses of it, very placed very well.
Mm-hmm.
Our next category is the actors and the casting.
Okay, so with the actors, I felt like it was good casting for the most part. Like with Paul and his son, I think it was good because like they kind of do resemble each other. Like I would see that like making sense in real life. So that was fine. But I noticed that the characters, I think we touched on it, like how the characters were playing both their older and younger selves, and Chadwick stayed the same age the whole entire time. I remember we were talking about how it looks cheap, like it seemed like they didn't have enough money, and then we looked it up and it was true they didn't have enough money. But I like when I was watching the movie, I thought that it was because they wanted to like showcase how Chadwick, sorry, not Chadwick, the forgot his name, Norman, how Norman was like a guiding light in their lives. Because in the flashbacks, he was always the one leading them, like encouraging them, singing songs to them, making them feel good. So I thought that like as they went back to Vietnam and like, you know, they were living a lot of their trauma, I thought like it was just done on purpose to have, you know, Chadwick like lead them on and yeah, like I said, be a guiding light in their lives. But I thought that they could have casted younger people to reenact their scenes too, though. But I guess they didn't have any money, so yeah.
I don't know. With the characters, I feel like they could have probably emphasized like more of like the individuals rather than like them as a collective. Because I feel like the movie, in my opinion, it was like Paul and the others. That's like how I viewed it. Like, because he was just like the standout character and like the standout actor throughout the whole movie. I feel like because he was giving us like a character we want to hate, but we love at the same time. Like it was devastating to see him like die, but at the same time, it was like, oh my God, someone tell him to shut up. So it was like, it was kind of hard to relate to the other characters because they weren't as out there and I guess, loud and proud as he was in a sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the casting was good. And like you said, like Paul was the standout. They they focused, at least it felt like they focused on him and his internal battle versus everyone else, which I mean, I guess it makes sense when they reveal like he's the one that accidentally killed Norm, but they didn't give anything else really of the other characters, especially Eddie. Eddie's the right one. Eddie, before he got blown up, the only thing that we learned about him is that he made a lot of money, but then he lost it all.
Yeah.
Like we didn't know any more than that. And then, Otis, everybody's kind of conflicted about his character because it's like, did he do something wrong? Or did he not? Like you don't know. Like you're left in kind of a limbo. The only character you can really form an opinion on is Paul.
Mhm.
Because you see, oh, look at all he's gone through, but also he's not a he's a bad person, but not because you understand all that he's gone through. So like you don't know with Paul, but that's the only person you can at least form a whole opinion about compared to everyone else.
I agree. Everyone else seemed like, I don't know, kind of lackluster. Like,
Right.
and I like to, until like certain points, I didn't know what everybody's name was. I knew his name because it was like, oh, that's Paul. He's like
Right.
yelling at these people. But it was like everybody else was just there. And I didn't understand certain characters, even like their point of being in the movie.
Right.
Yeah. I will also say, like, the last clip where they're like receiving the money and stuff. I thought it was interesting that they just showed like the people's family and we had to kind of like put together the dots who all was who.
Right.
Yeah.
I just thought that, I don't know, I feel like the main issue I had with the casting for this movie was I would have really preferred to see the men either get like younger actors to play their younger self or that they did some form of editing or just like even just dyed their beards black or something to make them look younger because I just didn't understand it. Like I understand if, that was supposed to be, a metaphor for something, like maybe because Norman is dead at this age. So they're like the only ones who got to grow old. But other than that, I honestly just didn't like that aspect of the movie. I feel like it would have been effective to see them grow old and see them be younger and grow up.
Yeah, we didn't really get like a view on anybody's lives. Like I honestly couldn't feel anything for these characters because it was like, oh, I don't really know. Like, who are you? Who are you leaving behind? All that stuff.
Right. And also it didn't like their flashbacks didn't feel real to me because it was just the five of them. Like it wasn't like any extras in the scene. I feel like when you put extras in a scene, it makes it feel more real. And I understand that like when you're in the battlefield, like it's just you and your feelings and you're just trying to get out alive. But at the same time, I felt like if maybe they did add more actors, like white actors, for example, because like there was a lot of racism like within the army during that time. I felt like it could have made it better. Like we could have actually seen their interactions with racism and stuff like that.
Our next section is settings and costumes. And we got like
Okay.
minutes.
So for the settings, the movie was based and filmed in Vietnam, and I feel like that was really effective because the scenes really did set the tone when you saw all the nature and when they had the images of the guerrilla warfare, like you could really see what they were trying to do, and they really were effective in making it seem like they were in the war, and when they traveled back, they were in the same place that they were. I would say I also liked how they did the radio scene. I also liked how when they started the movie, when they started in like that bar, I think it's interesting to see how, they feel like everyone's staring at them. And I think it's effective in showing people who come back and have that, that privilege to come back versus like what life looks like there, because obviously the men are wearing like them Hawaiian vacation shirt, like the tourist stereotype. And I just think that that was interesting of them to do, because I really do feel like it shows privilege to be able to come back to the country where you fought a war while, you know, the rest of the country is, you know, still putting together the pieces. Um, I think just going to HBCU, it was interesting to see the Morehouse shirt that made its appearance throughout the entire movie. I was kind of confused about that because I feel like it was a little extra to have, like, you know, the son wear the Morehouse shirt, you know, HBCU pride. So I enjoyed it, but I do feel like it was a little extra to kind of like solidify like Black power. But I feel like it would have been more effective if he changed the shirt throughout the movie, because he just kept it on and it got tattered throughout the time. I think one of the main costume pieces to talk about is the Make America Great Again hat. I want to know what everybody thinks about that. I think that they chose that to really set Paul's character up to show like everything that he's dealing with, because historically, Make America Great is very anti-Black.
Yeah, I honestly, like, when he first came in, I didn't know like what I expected his like character to be, but he was completely the opposite. And like when he pulled out the hat, I was like, oh, I didn't expect him to be like, oh, you're very conservative. Like, I didn't expect it that way. I thought like his time in the military probably would have changed him rather than like, I don't know, like pulled him in for more like, I guess, American pride in a sense. And I like how at the end we see it like come back, so then they know essentially what happened to him, I guess. Or they can like, I guess, guess what happened to him with the hat.
Yeah, I think the hat was a good costume choice. Again, like it really set off what kind of behavior that we should expect from Paul, because throughout, especially those first 30-45 minutes, like we see how he feels towards the Vietnamese people that are there. And then in the flashbacks, we see how he feels like when MLK is assassinated. So we kind of see how he gets to that point. But you know, when he shows off the hat and everybody's like, "Oh, we didn't know you were one of those people," like, because it doesn't make sense. How can you become more pro-American, but you served this country while they were like when you had no rights? So it very like it his character, it really set up his character and how like the war affected him.
Yeah. We got like 6 minutes left. So I'm gonna tie together like our last two things. So our last two sections are the psychological impact of the film, and then like the overall question of how can films make us understand more about war and its consequences. So we had said like basically you can tell that the movie is based off of like different aspects of PTSD. And we especially see it in Paul and like his behaviors and like how he reacts to certain things. Something that I always think about when we talk about like the movie and everything is like when in the beginning, when you see like that kid with the stuff, like I don't know what it was, I think it was like firecrackers. And then you see how they all reacted to it and they all were like on the ground, scared and everything. And then when they eventually go into the forest, they start like not hallucinating, but they start like acting different, like their behaviors are like more hostile, and you can just tell how the war had basically torn apart their personalities.
Yeah, they definitely highlighted PTSD and the different effects that it has on different people, because we know from Eddie, you know, he lost all his money. We know from Paul, like even though he experienced a little bit more death than the other characters, you can still see how much of a toll that the war had on him. But Otis, like he ended up having a child that he didn't know about, or at least that we think he didn't know about. So it really shows like all the different effects that war can have on you as a person, and then like the group as a whole.
Yeah. And I know like didn't Otis, he had like an addiction, and then what's his name? Melvin had like back problems, and then they also thought that maybe he also had like a drug problem as well because
The alcohol addiction too.
Yeah, so it was like you kind of see like the effects that the war had on them afterwards. And then also you see like the relationship between, isn't like Paul's son's name David?
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
see like how the war impacted their relationship as well. And how David is more sensitive in the sense of like caring about other people, and Paul is more cutthroat. And then you see
Right.
that causes them to clash until like the end with the letter.
Hmm.
Um,
Mm.
and
Yeah, I
then
think that,
I was gonna say you also see like an overall distrust amongst the group.
yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like an overarching message about one of them about the film is like just the whole time the film showed, brutal scenes. There's a lot of brutalization, but as the film goes on, like the people in it, and I feel like the viewers ourselves get more desensitized to it and feel less shocked at the way these people are murdered. Like even though Paul is murdered really brutally and it's clearly shown on the camera, and then you compare that to Melvin, like I think it was like probably one of the last people murdered, and it was very less brutal. Like we pretty much didn't see any like gruesomeness from his murder, and we were kind of still desensitized to it just because it was a lot lighter than the rest of the murders from before.
Right.
And also speaking of the murders, I feel like the reason why they made the murders so gruesome was for us as viewers to really capture how like Vietnam, like how violent Vietnam really was. Because like they talk about it all the time. They talk about these landmines and stuff, but there's not really like any like documented evidence as to like how people die. So like I guess this movie was really trying to capture the essence of that, and they did a really good job. Because I'm scarred, to be honest. I'm not watching this movie again.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different parts that really speak to how this movie really encaptures like how it is to be in war, because we talked about the plot and how it seems to be a lot of plot holes, there's a lot of chaos, and I feel like that's kind of reflective of war, like for there to be so much going on for you not to be able to like catch a breath.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would also say like one scene that stuck out to me was when the French lady was mentioning how the war is never really over, even after all the troops are gone. And I think the movie did a good job of showing that because it showed how Vietnam as a country was really destroyed, even for generations like afterwards. They're still picking up the pieces. When we see the children with mutations or the limbs missing and bombs going off way after the war's over, that's something that they have to deal with, that we as Americans, when we pull out of a war, we don't have to see the aftermath. And I think as Americans, we are desensitized because we don't, deal with the same problems that a lot of other countries do in that way. Um, so I think that that was really effective, and that shows, culturally how maybe it reveals why there's prejudice and racism in all these different ways, because these other countries are still facing these issues when we're, living on top, traveling back to them, spending our money there when their people are still suffering.
I agree. I think that's also why I kind of like the setting, because you do sort of see like how like it's different in a sense in America after a war, and then you see like how you said before, like they're still picking up the pieces. So I think that's something I like about the setting too. And then like the casting, you see people that like you would assume like they really are affected, or like if they aren't, they were affected by what happened before. And you see it in like, I guess, the people that he decided to cast in the movie, and I enjoyed that. Um, so we can like finish it off like our final points.
Overall, I think that it was like a decent movie. There are some highs and some lows, but I guess that's just every movie, to be honest. But Spike Lee and the entire cast and crew, I think that they, in some ways, that they did effectively teach us what war looks like, and like you said, like what the aftermath whether it's psychological or environmental, like we really see those type of things. In every aspect, you know, the editing was not too terrible. The music choice was pretty decent. All of these things really tied into how war takes a toll on people.
I agree. I don't know how I felt about the movie, if I'm gonna be honest. I felt like I watched it, it was pretty long, and then I was finished watching it. I feel like I would have enjoyed it better if we probably would have learned more about different characters and like their overall point. Like honestly, the French lady and like her trio or whatever, I didn't understand like their point of being in the movie. And I wish I like we could have learned more. And I wish like if the movie was just, I guess, put together differently in a way. Like
Right.
you see more of each individual character and then you get like what's going on in the like story. And I remember earlier we said we probably would have enjoyed it more if it was more so like a, oh, they finally make it to the gold. And then it's like, oh, the gold's not there. Somebody took it. And then it's like you can tell like the distrust amongst the group based off of like previous things that happened and like just their overall disconnect rather than trying to like continue to put on like a face like they're all a collective group that enjoys each other's company, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, um, with this movie, like I said before, I'm not watching it again. Like, I don't see how I would watch it for like pure enjoyment. But it was okay. It's not something that I'll shout about and recommend to people, but it's good if you want to learn about the Vietnam War. I feel like it was educational. Yeah.
Honestly, I really felt like the movie was just a miss for me. It didn't really hit the mark just because I felt like I just couldn't connect to the characters. Like in some ways, I was able to connect to their story based on the different traumas and different things that they were going through. Unless like the movie's aim was just to be effective in showing a disconnect between veterans and the world around them, then I feel like other than that, I couldn't really relate to the movie. It didn't like bring up any emotions from me. And just it being super unrealistic, in my opinion, made it like kind of unenjoyable for me.
I agree.
Yeah, I just want to add, like, yeah, the movie definitely had peaks for me, but it definitely just wasn't consistently good or like consistently. It didn't keep me. And I didn't feel like I wanted to. I didn't feel like I was on track to really enjoy the movie. Like there were peaks where I was interested, and then just kind of like dropped off. But aside from that, I feel like the characters themselves were okay. Like as a whole, the movie was just okay.
Yeah, I feel like they could have did better by trying to reach out to people like to make like how we said in class, sort of like the movie didn't make the audience, or my opinion, me feel anything for the characters or feel anything through the characters. So it just felt like, I don't know, it was just the movie happened and then like the ending was just, it kind of confused me with like the Grease-like ending, like we said before, and then just like you don't really know anything about anybody. I don't know. I probably wouldn't recommend the movie, but I don't know. It wasn't as bad or as I like to originally thought it was, but it's also not that good.
Right. And I feel like I had my hopes up because it was Spike Lee and I enjoy Spike Lee movies, but I don't know. I guess I'm assuming because of like his like how he's popular and famous and stuff and he's so successful, I guess he kind of got lazy with this movie. But yeah.
And COVID probably played a part as well.
Yeah, like he
Right.
yeah.
I'm
Definitely.
gonna blame this one on COVID.
Yeah. Because I like Spike Lee, so I'll just blame it on COVID. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.